He's blind as a bat. When I heard this phrase, I entered the garage and saw the end of my past. But at the time, I could not imagine that the ending would take my abusers by surprise in a completely unimaginable place. That's the first thing I heard as I stepped into my own garage. The words landed like a wrench dropped on concrete. Loud, stupid, and impossible to ignore. It took a second for my eyes to adjust to the dim yellow light swinging overhead. The bulb flickered like it knew something I didn't. Rain whispered against the tin roof, tapping out a rhythm that didn't quite match the pounding in my chest. Then I saw them. Ashley, my wife of 12 years, kissing Brandon, my business partner of 8. She had one hand on his chest, her head tilted just enough to make it real, not some clumsy, confused accident. Her scarf, the red one I got her last Christmas, was draped over the edge of my toolbox like it belonged there. Brandon's back was against my old '85 Chevy pickup, the one I'd been restoring piece by piece since before I met either of them. A beer can sat on the bench, the same brand I brought home yesterday. I remember because it was the last one in the fridge. Ashley pulled away first. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Just blinked like I was early to a show I wasn't invited to. "Kevin," she said, casual as a weather report. I dropped my keys. Loud. Sharp. Like a gunshot in a church. They laughed. I swear to God they laughed. Brandon grabbed his jacket, the one I gave him for his birthday last year, and bolted out the side door like a teenager sneaking out after curfew. Ashley didn't move. Didn't chase him. Didn't look at me. "Don't be dramatic," she muttered, reaching for the scarf. That's when I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Something colder. Something heavier. Let me back up a minute. My name's Kevin. I'm 40. I fix things. Cars mostly, sometimes bikes, sometimes people's messes when they don't know what they're doing. I've been a mechanic in Detroit since I was 18. Started this garage with Brandon when we were still dumb enough to think a handshake could mean something. Met Ashley at a friend's barbecue. She hated the smell of oil on my hands, but loved the way I cooked ribs. We fought sometimes. Lately, more than sometimes. A week ago, she said I was always at work, like that wasn't the reason we could afford groceries. Like love was something that just showed up when you punched out at 5. "I'm not your damn roommate," she'd snapped over dinner. "I want to feel wanted." I wanted to tell her I fixed her car last month. Replaced the brake pads, checked the oil, topped off the washer fluid without her even asking. That's how I show love. I fix things. But apparently she wanted something else. I stared at the place Brandon had been standing. There was a boot print on the concrete, smudged by rainwater and betrayal. Ashley lit a cigarette. Inside my garage, like she owned the air in it. "So what now?" she asked, exhaling smoke without looking at me. What now? I didn't know. I wanted to yell, throw something, maybe break that damn beer can against the wall. But I didn't move. My feet were stuck to the floor like the rubber had melted. My chest felt tight, not like a heart attack, more like being punched with a memory. Her laugh from when we first danced in the driveway. Brandon helping me lift the engine block last fall. Her hand on his chest. His words still echoing, "He's blind as a bat." Maybe I was, but not anymore. I walked past her slow, careful, picked up the beer can. Still cold. The rain had picked up, hammering the roof like it was trying to drown out the silence between us. Ashley said nothing. She just smoked, watching me like I was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong movie. I thought about every lie, every long night she said she was out with her sister, every time Brandon had to stay late. It all clicked like a bad spark plug, just enough juice to start the fire. I looked at the workbench. My tools were in their places. The rag was still stained with grease. And then I saw it, her phone, sitting there next to the wrench I'd used that morning. The screen lit up. An unknown number. It rang. Once. Twice. Then stopped. Rain hit hard like nails on glass. I pushed out of the garage without a word, keys clenched tight in my fist. My boots slapped the wet pavement. The street stretched ahead, empty, soaked, humming with the buzz of a dying streetlight that flickered like a bad conscience. Puddles reflected everything but the truth. Wind whipped my jacket, slapped my face, pulled at me like it wanted to send me back. But I didn't stop walking. I passed the corner liquor store. Closed. A mangy dog barked somewhere behind a fence. I headed toward the old bridge, the one over the river where I used to fish as a kid, back when things made sense. The metal railing was slick with rain. My chest heaved, not from the walk, but from the weight. My lungs felt too tight for air. I gripped the rail, looked down. Brown water churned below, thick and fast. Ashley's eyes flashed in my mind, cold, flat, bored. That little smirk like I was just another chore on her list. And Brandon? His voice, smug and lazy, he's blind as a bat. I could have turned back, confronted them, shouted, thrown punches, maybe broken something that wouldn't fix. But I didn't, because I knew if I turned around, I'd lose more than a marriage or a business. I'd lose myself, and I still had that, even if it felt like not much. So I chose the river. Not to jump, I'm not built that way, but to leave everything behind on its muddy banks. Lightning cracked. The wind picked up. My phone buzzed in my pocket, then went black, battery dead. Fitting. Even that part of my life had run out of charge. I turned my collar up and kept walking. Every step felt heavier. My legs ached from the miles. Wet denim clung to my knees. My boots squished with every step, full of grit and cold. The city shrunk behind me, lights fading, replaced by fields and silence. Then headlights. Faint at first, growing. A big rig slowed beside me, tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Window rolled down. A face leaned out, gray beard, trucker cap, eyes that had seen more than I ever would. "Son," he said, voice rough like gravel. "You look like a ghost. Get in." I didn't argue. Climbed up, water dripping from my sleeves, my hair the corner of my coat. He handed me a towel that smelled like diesel and old coffee. I wiped my face, cleared my throat, tried to remember how to speak. "Thanks," I managed. "Frank," he said, one hand on the wheel. "You headed anywhere?" "Anywhere but back," I said. He nodded like he'd heard that before. Frank didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The cab was warm. Radio crackled low. Some blues singer wailing about love lost and whiskey found. We drove through the night. Every mile gave me a little space to breathe. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the sky stayed gray. Frank dropped me at a diner by the freeway, slapped a 20 into my palm, said, "Go fix whatever's broken." Funny choice of words. I found a bus back into town, not to the house, never again, but to a lawyer's office near the courthouse. The place smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed above cracked tile. I filled out the forms with a stiff hand, every box another nail in the coffin of what used to be. Ashley wouldn't be surprised. I imagined she'd roll her eyes, call it dramatic. But I needed it. Not revenge. Not justice. Just done. I slept that night in a motel off 8 Mile. The kind where the front desk doesn't ask questions. My wallet was thinner. My head was heavier. Obstacle 1, no money. Not much left after the papers, the bus fare, and a burger that tasted like cardboard. Obstacle 2, the weather. The rain started again. Harder this time. Like the sky wanted to make sure I knew I was starting from scratch. Obstacle 3, me. I was tired. Deep tired. The kind you don't sleep off. My back hurt. My fingers ached, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not the Ashley I married. The one from yesterday. The one who laughed. The next morning, I walked back to where Frank dropped me. Didn't know why. Habit, maybe. Or hope. The truck was still there. Empty. I stood beside it, staring at the wet chrome, watching the trees sway in the wind. The world felt too quiet. Then I heard it, a train whistle, long and low in the distance. And behind me, just beneath the hum of the rain, a shadow moved near the truck. The work steadied my hands again. That's how it started. Turning bolts in the cold, rust-stained light of a barn 30 miles outside Detroit. The place smelled of hay, diesel, and old regrets. But it was solid, honest. No lies hanging in the air, just dust motes and the bark of a dog behind the wall. always sounding half surprised to still be alive. The tools were a mess. Rusty, scattered, like the guy before me had quit halfway through a job and never looked back. But I didn't mind. I brought my own rhythm. Thermos of coffee by my elbow, socket wrench in hand, boots planted firm in the sawdust. Each bolt I turned felt like a piece of myself coming back into alignment. The tractors were temperamental, old machines with more quirks than reliability, but I understood them. They didn't lie. They didn't pretend. You gave them what they needed, and they worked. Or they didn't. No games. Frank showed up 3 days into the job. I was elbow deep in the engine of a Massey Ferguson when I heard the familiar rattle of his rig rolling up the gravel. "Still got city hands," he said, stepping down from the cab. Gray hair tucked under that same old cap, pipe already smoldering in the corner of his mouth. "But at least now you smell like work." I shook his hand. It was firm, solid, the kind of handshake that didn't need follow-up questions. He started showing up once a week, bringing parts and stories in equal measure. Talked about highways like old friends, and always left me with a line or two of half-baked wisdom. "Life's a road, not a ditch," he said once, tossing me a wrench. "Stay in motion, and you won't rust." Sometimes we'd work side by side, him leaning over the engine, puffing away, me trying not to let him see how much I was learning. Other times we'd sit on upturned buckets, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the sun peel back the frost on the fields. I ever tell you about the time I ran a load of pumpkins into a tornado, he'd ask, and somehow I never minded the repetition. He never asked about Ashley. Never asked why I was out here fixing busted tractors instead of running a garage in the city. He didn't have to. Men like Frank speak more with silence than questions. A week passed. Then 2. I got used to the rhythm. Early mornings, grease under my nails. Evenings watching the sky burn out in streaks of orange and gray. Then came a call. It was just after dusk. I was pouring the last of my coffee into the dirt when the phone buzzed in my pocket. Screen cracked, signal weak. A number I knew too well. I hesitated. Let it ring twice. Then 3 times. Then I answered. "Kevin." Her voice was quieter than I remembered. Softer. Trembling like the last leaf on a tree before winter takes it. I didn't say a word. I just a pause. "Can we talk?" Click. I hung up, but my hand wouldn't leave my pocket. Not right away. I stood there, frozen, as the dog barked somewhere behind the barn. The air felt colder. My chest tight again, that old pressure like standing underwater. Back in the shed, I reached for my jacket. The one I hadn't worn since the night Frank found me. Something crinkled in the pocket. A photo. Us. At the lake, 3 summers back. Her in that yellow sundress, hair caught in the wind, laughing at something I can't even remember. My fists clenched around the edges. I didn't tear it, didn't throw it, just stood there, staring like an idiot, trying to remember which version of her was real. The divorce wasn't going quietly. My lawyer, a woman with sharp glasses and a sharper tone, called to say Ashley was contesting the property split. Said she deserved her share. Of what? The house I built? The tools I paid for? The life she torched? "Don't let her twist you," the lawyer said. "This is just the aftershock." She was right. Still, it stung. Each day, I worked harder. Fixed more engines. Put my back into it like I could sweat the past out of me. Frank noticed. "Good work," he said one afternoon, tapping a newly running deer with his boot. "You're starting to look like someone who can breathe again." I nodded. Didn't trust myself to answer. That evening, the sky was a watercolor of gold and gray. I stood in the doorway of the barn, coffee in hand, watching the wind roll through the tall grass. Then I heard it, a knock on the barn door. Slow, firm. The sun dipped low, and a long shadow moved across the floor. They knocked like they still belonged there. I opened the barn door and saw them, Ashley and Brandon, standing in the twilight like ghosts who hadn't figured out they were dead yet. Rain clung to her coat, plastered her hair to her cheeks. Her eyes were red, swollen. He was hunched, cigarette dangling from his fingers, like even he didn't believe he should be there. They looked smaller, dimmer, like time had drained the shine from them. Or maybe I just finally wiped the fog off the glass. Ashley stepped forward first. "Kevin," she said, her voice soft, rehearsed. "Please, can we talk?" I didn't move. My hands stayed in my pockets, but inside they were trembling. She used to know that, the way my fingers would twitch when I was angry, when I was holding something in. Brandon hovered behind her. "I'm sorry, man," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "It got messy." Messy. That's what he called it. I stayed silent for a moment. Let the sound of the rain and the creak of the barn door fill the space between us. Ashley took another step, eyes pleading now. "I made a mistake. We both did. But I never stopped." "No," I said. Flat. Cold. They both flinched. I turned and walked back inside, slow. Not because I wanted them to follow, but because I wanted them to see the calm, the strength. Not rage, just something firmer. They followed anyway. Ashley wrung her hands as she stepped inside. Brandon hung back by the door like a kid waiting to be told he couldn't come in. The barn was warm, tools clean, my thermos steaming on the workbench. The life I'd built in the wreckage of theirs. I reached into a drawer by the table, pulled out the ring. My wedding ring. Still had the faint line where I used to wear it, though the skin had started to heal. I placed it on the table. "Take it," I said. Ashley's lip quivered. She didn't move. I looked at Brandon. "You too. You helped break it." His face flushed. He dropped his cigarette, crushed it under his boot. A pathetic gesture like it could mean something. "I don't want anything," he muttered. "Good," I said. "Because there's nothing left." Ashley reached for the ring, then pulled her hand back like it burned. She looked around the barn, taking it all in. The tools. The dirt-streaked window. The dog barking behind the wall. "This is where you've been?" she asked. I nodded. "Fixing things." She looked down. "I miss you." I exhaled slow. "You missed the version of me you could ignore. The one who didn't see what was happening in his own garage." She opened her mouth. Closed it. The silence sat heavy. Brandon shifted his weight from foot to foot. I could feel it, the urge to lash out, to throw something, to punch him so hard he couldn't speak for a week. But I didn't, because they already looked broken, and I wasn't going to lower myself to join them. "You destroyed me," I said, voice low, "but I'm still standing. And you? You're just wet." Ashley looked up sharply. Her eyes filled again, but I didn't care. Those tears weren't mine to comfort. I turned my back, walked to the bench, picked up a rag, and wiped my hands, even though they weren't dirty. It gave me something to do, something to hold. The urge to forgive tugged at me, weak and quiet. But I couldn't find anything in me to offer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some things aren't bent, they're shattered. In the morning, I cleaned my tools. Slow, careful, deliberate. The barn smelled like oil and sawdust and faint traces of rain. I remembered her voice. "I can't live this boring life forever." That's what she said weeks before it all cracked. Maybe she thought pain was more exciting. The divorce had been finalized the week before. The judge banged the gavel like it was the end of a movie. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The paperwork was in the drawer beneath the ring. Filed. Finished. I looked out at the barn door. Empty now, until Brandon stepped forward, flicked his cigarette, let it fall. Ashley turned to leave slow, and as she stepped into the dusk, she whispered something I couldn't quite hear. But it chilled me all the same. Freedom tastes better when you've earned it. I bought a house by the river. Not much to look at first. Chipped siding, creaky floorboards, a porch half-rotted from years of Michigan weather. But it was mine. Every inch. I painted the walls with my own hands. Pine green outside, warm gray inside. Smelled like fresh wood and clean starts. The porch faced the water. Most evenings, I'd sit there with a mug of black coffee, listening to the river murmur like it was telling secrets too old to matter. Birds nested in the eaves. The trees swayed like they were nodding in agreement. "You made it," they seemed to say. "You're still here." I chopped firewood in the mornings. Sweat on my brow, axe in hand, radio crackling some blues or old country from the window. No alarms, no traffic, no Ashley. Just the steady rhythm of work. real work, firewood, repairs, peace. The workshop came next, a converted shed out back. I fixed chainsaws, rototillers, the occasional four-wheeler. Word got around. Locals started showing up with their busted gear and their busted stories. They paid in cash, pies, or favors. And I was making more than I had in Detroit. Not just in money, but in something better. Quiet pride. That kind that doesn't need applause. Frank showed up every Thursday like clockwork. Same old truck, same pipe, same dry humor. "Look at you," he'd grin, handing me a coffee. Gone country on me. We'd sit on the porch, boots kicked up, steam curling from our mugs. He'd pull out pictures of his daughter, in college now, studying to be a vet. "You'd like her," he'd say, sharp as barbed wire. Heart like a freight train. Sometimes we talked engines. Sometimes women. Sometimes we didn't say anything at all. Just let the river talk. I thought about Ashley less with every passing week. The tremble in my fingers was long gone. So was a hollow feeling in my gut. That space had been filled with lumber, laughter, and grease under my nails. Funny thing, betrayal doesn't kill you. It chisels you, strips you down until all that's left is what's real. I was never weak, just trusting. And maybe that's the same thing, depending on who you ask. But I survived it. The lies, the way she looked at him, the echo of that garage door slamming shut behind Brandon. I didn't forgive them, still haven't, but I no longer carry them with me. I buried their ghosts in the foundation of this house, layered them under the paint, burned them in the firewood. They took everything but my name, and I built that name into something better, something clean. There were small joys now, a fresh pot of coffee, the crack of kindling, a radio tune that hit just right. My hands were rougher, my back ached more, but I slept like a stone. One night in late October, Frank brought by a generator that wouldn't start. "You still got magic in those hands?" he asked, grinning. "More now than before," I said, and meant it. He stayed late that night. We grilled sausages out back, drank cheap beer under the stars, and let the silence settle in between stories. When he left, the tail lights faded into the mist like a memory. I stood on the porch, watched the moon dance on the water. The wind rustled the leaves, and for once, it didn't feel like something was sneaking up behind me. It just felt like wind. I thought of Ashley then, briefly, not with pain, not even anger, just a quiet recognition, like spotting someone in an old yearbook. That woman isn't in my story anymore. The divorce left me nearly broke. She fought for more than she deserved, and I let her win because I knew what mattered wasn't in the bank. It was in my bones, in the way I stood up straighter, breathed deeper. I'd rebuilt, and not just the walls of the house. Myself. The fire in the stove crackled low as I sat by the window that night, feet up, warm mug in hand. Outside, the river rolled on, indifferent and endless. I heard the horn of a barge in the distance, but I didn't know if I would ever go back to the city.